Welcome back to another episode of the cATalyzing podcast. And I'm really excited for this episode. Number one, because my 4 kids are all gamers. So who knows in the future where esports will be at that point. And I'm excited about that. But secondly, when I was at Indianapolis this year for NATA 2023, I had the pleasure of meeting Elliot Smithson there. And we just got to talking about what he does. And I was like, man, I want to share this story. And, esports is exploding. Things are rocking in that realm. And we as healthcare professionals get to make a big impact in a lot of different ways. So really great to have a conversation with you, Elliot, about your role at 1HP. Elliot Smithson is the co-founder and head of business development and product development at esports medicine with 1HP. And, he's involved with a lot of different things. And I really wanted to dive in. You're an athletic trainer. You got involved into esports. Let's just kind of get into that story. First, what led to you working in esports and going down that path and getting involved with 1HP? And who do you collaborate with on your team there?
Yeah, Ryan, thank you so much for having me on the show today. Really appreciate being here and be able to speak to the athletic training crowd. It's definitely where my background is in most of my career as an athletic trainer. A little bit of back history on me. I finished my undergrad in athletic training at University of Central Florida. Did a lot of work with their traditional sports teams as well as some of their performing arts stuff with the cheer team there. Went on to do some work over at Walt Disney World, Parks and Resorts with a lot of the entertainment staff over there. So I was already starting to lead into kind of entertainment medicine early on. My background before getting into athletic training was in martial arts. So always had kind of aspirations of becoming a stuntman and getting involved kind of that way in the entertainment business. But then I quickly realized after going to stunt school that I didn't really want to break my neck. So I decided to kind of work on the back end for helping improve health and performance of that population. So finished my undergrad at UCF, worked for Disney for about a year, then went and did my master's at Marshall University as a graduate assistant, building out a program for the performing arts there. That was an amazing experience. I learned a lot of the skills that I've been using today in kind of building out what we're doing in the esports industry, just as far as program development goes. After that, I decided that I was going to go and get my doctorate in physical therapy, just to kind of round out my skill set as well as have the direct access. So after finishing my doctorate in physical therapy at University of St. Augustine, kind of around the time I was doing my internships, I started to notice that esports was getting enormous. And I was watching the Fortnite World Cup in 2019, and I saw the $30 million prize pool, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of effort being put into this. I wonder if there's any kind of health and performance initiatives. So I started Googling around, and after hearing a talk at one of the APTA conferences regarding the emergence of esports medicine, I found some of the folks over at 1HP, specifically Matt Hu and Kate McGee, who are kind of the initial founders of our organization. I reached out to Matt via Twitch chat. He was streaming Fortnite at the time, and I was a big Fortnite guy. So I was like, hey, this is kind of my background, what I've been doing. Really interested in seeing where we can take this. He brought me on as an intern initially, and then after that, the rest is kind of history. But now I'm a full owner of the company. I'm one of the founding members. And we've really expanded our offerings and scope of services in the past 4 years that I've been doing this. Time really flies. But yeah, after I finished my doctorate in physical therapy, packed everything in my car, moved out to Los Angeles, started working with the pro teams out here, and we built out all these different services to get healthcare providers involved at every level.
That's awesome. And how many members do you have complete, with the whole 1HP esports team?
I would say we're sitting somewhere between 10 to 20 members now that are kind of at various levels. Some are full-time salaried employees, some are contractors. We have a lot of kind of partners as well that kind of work into the mix as needed for different educational components, like sleep specialists and motivational speakers. Sometimes we'll have like former Navy SEALs come in and talk to the players about mental toughness and things like that. So it kind of depends on how you slice that, but somewhere between 10 to 20 total members of 1HP or affiliates in one way, shape, or form. But yeah, that's kind of the story in a nutshell. But like I said, my heart is in athletic training, and I really think that there's a lot of applications for the athletic training skill set in this population.
Absolutely. And you've already mentioned it, that it's blooming right now, and it's high intensity training. The competition schedule is crazy for esports athletes, and it can really impact their physical health. So, like, what are some of the common health issues, some of the common challenges and problems that you're seeing arising from this training regimen, from this competition schedule, and then how are they typically addressed, within the esports industry?
Yeah, so at the professional level of esports, these players are getting paid 6 to 7 figures to play the game. So they often play out of office space that is rented, where all of the team members can come in and they work with their coaches and managers, and they have chefs come in on site and cook for them. They have PR folks, and they have um, media people, video editors, all kind of working to put on this entire production that is esports at the team level. So these players are putting in at least 8 hours a day of kind of organized scrims, so scrimmages where they're playing other teams on the circuit, and they're putting in hours that way, and then they're often going home and playing 3 or 4 more hours of solo games in their own time in order to practice and get better. So they're playing 10 to 12 hours a day on average, these players, and that causes a lot of issues from a musculoskeletal health standpoint, as well as kind of a medical health standpoint, and a lot of other ways as well. But we'll just talk about the musculoskeletal component for right now. So a lot of things that we see are repetitive stress injuries of the wrist and forearm. So a lot of tendinopathy spectrum disorders. Carpal tunnel is one of the biggest things that people throw out there as kind of the main hypothesis as to what these players deal with. And true carpal tunnel, which is that thickening of that carpal tunnel ligament, isn't really seen in this population this early. Anytime that we've seen symptoms of carpal tunnel, like median nerve entrapment at the carpal tunnel, usually has to do with kind of the thickened flexor tendons from some inflammation that they're dealing with as part of a tendinopathy. So to say true carpal tunnel happens in esports is a bit of a misnomer and a myth. But we definitely do see repetitive stress injuries all the time. So tendinopathy spectrum disorders of the wrist flexors, wrist extensors, thumb abductors, extensors, your typical de Quervain's presentation, thumb abduction tendinopathy is a big one that we see a lot. Nerve entrapments are very common, whether it be Wartenberg syndrome at the radial tunnel there, ulnar nerve entrapment at either the elbow from their posture and position, or at a thoracic outlet syndrome where at the neck and shoulder region. Nerve entrapments play a big role in some of the injuries that we see from the musculoskeletal side of things, as well as typical like neck pain, cervical radiculopathy, cervicogenic headaches. Low back pain is a big one that we see from the kind of lower cross syndrome and the upper cross syndrome in the shoulder and cervical spine. So a lot of these issues are completely preventable and manageable as long as the players are training appropriately to play their game. You can climb mountains, you can jump off of buildings, you can dive to the bottom of the ocean. You can do all these things that the human body is capable of doing if you train it appropriately. You can sit at a desk and play 12 hours a day if you're training it appropriately for that. And that's where we come in. We try to encourage these players to be developing habits around prevention as well as management of injuries. But we really focus on the prevention side of things. It's our goal for all these players to have some kind of regular cardio, regular strength and conditioning, regular stretching. They're taking breaks. They're doing wrist prehab exercises for these repetitive stress injuries. Our goal is just to educate these players and kind of get ahead of these injuries before they develop. But definitely a lot of what we do, just due to the culture of esports, is reactive in nature. A lot of these teams don't buy into the full prevention package until something is happening. And then that's usually where we kind of come in, and then we try to land and expand. So we're like, hey, we dealt with this injury for your player, but why wouldn't it be better if all your players were on a injury prevention plan, as opposed to us having to come in and react after this player has already lost game time that you're paying them to be on contract for? So yeah, that I think that answers the question.
Yeah, and I'm also, in addition to all of that with the preventative program, I'm sure ergonomics is something you work with them as well too, in terms of like setting up their game space. If you whatever you call it, they're setting up their space with their chair,
Yeah.
their screen position as well, all that stuff.
Yeah. So at the beginning of a season, when we work with a formal esports team, we do a pre-participation screening that covers everything from their vital signs, like height and weight type stuff, body fat assessment, ergonomic and posture screening at their desk setup. What peripherals they use matter, whether they're playing with a controller versus a mouse and keyboard is going to impact the types of stress that they're putting on their wrist and hands. The positioning of their mouse and keyboard. A lot of players, especially ones from overseas in Korea and China, they have a big what they call LAN center or internet cafe culture over there. So they have really tiny desks that they need to get a mouse and keyboard on. So a lot of them have adopted this like horizontal or vertical keyboard configuration where the keyboard is vertical and they're playing with their arm completely on the desk.
Oh, wow.
And in serious like internal rotation and abduction of the shoulder. So dealing with a lot of these different ergonomic and postural considerations that each one of these players has, and adapting protocols to kind of address the imbalances that they might be developing due to their play style is really important at the beginning of the season. So we do the posture and ergonomic screening, we do a mobility screening, we do a strength and endurance screening, and then there's some other screenings that we can do as well, depending on some of the other professionals that are going to be working with the players, whether it be sleep, nutrition, eye health, things like that as well, that we can do to screen for different issues that they deal with.
Absolutely. And you do take a holistic approach, and you alluded to it earlier, more than just the physical aspect of injury. It's also the whole body systems and the mental, the emotional health. So let's talk about the mental health aspect of esports athletes. It's really a significant aspect of the overall well-being for them. How does this competitive nature of esports, including the pressure to perform, the potential for burnout, having to have it on that screen time, just all those factors that come into it, how does it impact the mental health of the players? And really, what support systems, you alluded to the guest speaker and whatnot, what support systems and resources do you provide for your athletes to help them reduce the impact negatively on the mental health side, emotional, and just general outside of the physical well-being?
Right. So at 1HP, we work with a clinical psychologist who's able to have one-on-ones with the players kind of on a weekly basis that we work with. And he comes through and screens for kind of all these different risk factors for burnout. Mm-hmm. He addresses individual needs as they arise. A lot of times players deal with most of these games that they play are team games. So a lot of times you have interpersonal communication issues. Players that got good just kind of playing on their own at home by themselves with their computer. Now they're suddenly put into this team environment where they have to learn how to communicate effectively with 4 other players that may or may not speak their language. And that can cause a lot of interpersonal issues and what we in the esports industry call tilting, where people get frustrated and they're not kind of like, they start throwing the game after they've gotten so frustrated they're not able to focus straight anymore. So dealing with tilt is a big issue. Dealing with communication between teammates is a big issue. Burnout is a big issue as well, and that has a lot to do with kind of their work-life balance, essentially teaching these players that they need to have some hobbies outside of the game. They need to be getting regular physical exercises that improves kind of the neurocognitive biomarkers associated with good mental health, facilitates dopamine and serotonin production and things like that. If you're not doing the bare minimum as far as like exercise, nutrition, and sleep goes, you're going to have yourself set up for kind of failure as far as mental health goes as well. So just incorporating these things, teaching the players kind of how to turn the page after a loss, teaching the players kind of how to self-regulate themselves, whether they're not stimulated enough before a match or too stimulated before a match, teaching them kind of how to recognize themselves and be able to kind of find a more healthy way of kind of like getting themselves to the optimal state of arousal before a match can be really helpful, whether it be through meditation or through some kind of light cardio and maybe like pump up music or something like that. So there's a lot of strategies that these performance coaches and our clinical psychologist utilizes in order to kind of optimize performance as well as mental health. But it definitely has a lot of stigma around it, this kind of video game culture with poor mental health. And a lot of people, they ended up getting really good at a video game because their external life maybe wasn't the best. So trying to overcome that bridge and treat this like any other athletic activity where it's a tool to kind of teach life skills is really important.
And in general, beyond what your company is doing, what you're doing, as an industry as a whole, how is the industry of esports embracing this approach to prioritizing mental health? Is it well received? The stuff that you're trying to do and help, or do you feel like, do you get a lot of resistance with trying to implement it?
It's coming along. I would say the mental health initiatives are much more kind of established in the industry than the physical health initiatives. Our biggest struggle is kind of connecting the dots to these team owners and letting them understand that, hey, you can't really have mental health without physical health as well.
Mhm.
So they're two sides of the same coin. If you really do want to focus on player health and performance, you have to be doing both of these things. There's still this big stigma that esports is a mental sport, or it's just a game. It's not a sport, and that is kind of not really productive conversation when we're talking about the needs of these players, and the perceptions of the people in the industry around it. Oh, like, yeah, they're not doing it. They're not athletes. They're not doing anything athletic. They don't need to be working out. Why would they? They're just playing a game. Like these conversations ultimately hurt the entire scene due to these preconceived notions about what an athlete is and what it means to be athletic and all this stuff. So the quicker we can overcome a lot of the stigma, the quicker we can start treating these players like the endurance athletes they are. I classify esports as a fine motor sport, as opposed to something like a game. If you're looking at something like a game like chess or poker, for instance, you can play that game with your arms tied behind your back, and just kind of giving somebody verbal cues like, hey, move the pawn from 11, whatever, D11 to D2 or whatever. But you can't really do that with an esport because it does require mechanical skill. So you do have to be able to execute fine motor tasks with precision, speed, and accuracy. So it really is a sport, and we definitely need to be treating the mind as well as the body like it is.
And as you're trying to increase the amount of and the scope of support that you can provide, you're not seeing all of these athletes just in person, right where you are. You potentially we leveraging telehealth and telemedicine aspects. What's some advice you have for utilizing telehealth and telemedicine that you found successful in your process?
Yeah, so at 1HP, we kind of have these three main verticals. The first vertical we have is our team services that we do kind of in person. A lot of it's in Los Angeles, where most of these teams are located. The second is this online telehealth service, which we're building out. We're calling that One Health Point. And we utilize a lot of telehealth services in order to provide your average gamer with kind of the tools necessary to overcome a lot of their issues that they're having from playing. And the general demographic that we see there is a lot of Gen Z millennial tech workers that also game in their spare time, and that's when they're noticing their pain. So they come to us in order to kind of deal with those issues. And we utilize the exact same principles that we utilize with the pros. We're just not able to physically do manual therapy with these people, but teaching them self-mobilization techniques can be a really helpful way to kind of get over that. And it's a lot of wrist and forearm pain, sometimes neck and back. And there's a lot of great ways that we have as athletic trainers and rehab professionals to kind of mitigate these issues with really high success rates. One of the main kind of techniques or schools of thought that we use when treating these issues, which are endurance issues ultimately, is Ebony Rio's work in tendon neuroplastic training. And she's done a lot of really great research out there about how to use essentially an externally paced stimulus to coordinate the motor center of the brain with the muscles that are actually performing the movements over time. So you're using a metronome to standardize the movement. It activates the more motor neurons, which allow for more smooth contraction of the muscles and evenly distributed force amongst the tendons, which allows them to heal faster. So all of our protocols involve use of a metronome when providing these rehab plans of care to these patients. And they see great results with it, and it's very specific to the movements that are required of them in their gaming, whether they play on a mouse and keyboard or a controller. We can isolate the specific muscles that are most commonly used to perform the techniques in the games that they're playing. So it'll look very different for a Rocket League player who's playing on a PlayStation 4 controller versus a League of Legends player who's using a mouse with 12 buttons on the side of it, as far as like actions per minute, as well as movement pattern distributions that they're repeatedly doing based on kind of what game they're playing, and even what position or champion in the game that they're playing. So there's a lot of nuance as far as that goes. But ultimately, as athletic trainers, we have a lot of clinical decision making skill that can be really useful for identifying exactly the anatomy involved and the best plan of care, as long as we have a baseline understanding of what the requirements are for the specific game that's being played.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I can imagine just with the wide scope of type of games and strategies, that just so much for you yourself to learn about, to study, to understand those that you provide care for, and to educate. And it seems also, just in looking at your website and talking to you, that education is huge in terms of what you're putting out there. Let's talk about the Esports Health and Performance Institute. Tell us a little bit about that. How was that created, and what really is the goal of what you deliver with that?
Yeah, so we decided to create the Esports Health and Performance Institute to kind of bridge this gap between what we have been learning at the professional level, working with these players, and kind of what the average clinician is learning coming out of school. And a lot of what we've done is take principles that you should already be familiar with as a clinician, and then we're just connecting the dots between a lot of the nuance that's present at the esports level. So there is a lot of information in there about these different types of games, the different type of peripherals used, whether you're like I was saying earlier, like a player using a PlayStation 4 controller versus a mouse and keyboard versus a fight stick playing a fighting game, and you're using a wine grip or wine glass grip on the joystick. Like there's just so much nuance there that we are able to kind of unpack for clinicians, and are providing them the tools in order to provide all of the same services that we do. We're just trying to equip clinicians with the same tools that we've had to learn the hard way over 10 years of experience, and we've made it kind of a fast track for them. So our goal with the Esports Health and Performance Institute is to be able to not necessarily have to be involved at each one of these collegiate programs that are popping up, each one of these high school programs that are popping up. We want to equip clinicians, and specifically, since we're talking about athletic trainers here, athletic trainers that are already involved in their school systems, athletics programs, to be able to get integrated into these esports programs and show value to both the players that are playing these games, as well as to the school's administration, to show value for the athletic training profession. A lot of money is going into these esports programs at the collegiate level, and the high school level. A lot of times with scholarships being offered for players to come to different collegiate programs. It's getting integrated into athletics at certain schools. And I think that this is going to be a trend that we're not seeing go away anytime soon. I think that this is here to stay, as it's a very easy way for schools to add on an additional program that can fall under athletics and provide whatever monetary benefits that come with that to a school. It's essentially just the price of the equipment to get everything set up, and essentially a coach. You don't have to invest in large basketball courts and football stadiums in order to make a successful program in esports. So it's very accessible in that way. And as part of that, I think it's really important that these players who may have not have had any experience to traditional athletics, health and performance systems, they've never been in a weight room. They've never monitored what they eat. They've never taken their health seriously in any kind of meaningful way. And being able as an athletic trainer to come in and show them that, hey, there are all these things you can do to really improve your health and subsequently your performance in this thing that you potentially want to go professional in. It's really rewarding as an athletic trainer to come in and be able to do that. And we've just provided the tools so you can learn to speak their language and be able to relate to them. That's probably the number one thing that's important to esports athletes, is being able to come in and relate to them. They can smell disingenuous providers a mile away, because you essentially you sound foreign to them if you don't really have the understanding and the experience of what they do. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely amazing, and just the fact that it's providing more opportunity for teens and even young adults or anyone who wants to get involved with it more opportunity that just to be involved in something that is a team, that is, a sport. It's really exciting. And for, athletic trainers, physical therapists, physicians, any healthcare providers, it's really important to be aware of what is going on with this, because this is really an area where they can truly help and make a difference. And, one last thing, the information is going to be in the show notes with the website to check out the Esports Health and Performance Institute. But in addition to studying up and learning what the languages and being able to relate and understand those core concepts, for anyone else who's a healthcare provider who's wishing to try and help esports athletes in their hometown, in their local area, what advice do you have for them?
I think just getting involved and understanding the culture is really important. Whether if so, like, let's say that you're a big fan of Super Smash Brothers and you want to start working with Super Smash Brothers players. They have a lot of local tournaments that you can go to. You can volunteer your time, say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I'm able to help. And you can just go and start to build connections with the community at the grassroots level. There's the great thing about video games is it's happening everywhere, all around us, all the time. There's so many small tournaments for things. You can get involved at the local level, build a caseload, say, I guarantee these players have had some kind of pain in some way, shape, or form. The statistics we use, 2/3 of Americans are gamers and about 50% will report pain at some point associated with playing. So if you go to one of these tournaments, it's very, very common for these players to say that they've had pain, and you can be the one that gets in there and lets them understand how they can help themselves. Or you can be involved in helping them as well. That is how 1HP started. We started going to tournaments, PAX, Genesis, all these different tournaments for these different video games. And we just started making ourselves available. We weren't charging anybody to be there. We were just starting to answer questions, help the community out at the local level, and it's grown into this industry that we've created, where we're working with the biggest teams at the highest levels. So you really can have a big impact at the local level. Just be interested. If you have any interest in any specific games, finding out what the competitive scene looks like for that. Not all games have a competitive scene. A lot of like single player, like role-playing games are not going to have a big competitive scene, but there's probably a scene online of streamers that play that game. And just getting involved at that level, getting on Twitch, talking with the streamers, talking with the communities, getting in the discords, asking them if they have any issues that you would be able to help with. What we've been doing, we've just gotten into the official Valorant Discord, and we've been running Ask Me Anything sessions on a monthly basis with them, where the players can come in and they just have access to us for a couple hours, and we just go through and we answer their questions. We do a live portion, like a podcast type deal. They come up on the stage and then I can ask questions with us, and then we do a text-based portion. So getting involved at your local level and through the internet is just invaluable. We have so many more opportunities for esports than traditional athletics as athletic trainers, just because of the nature of the internet. Like if you want to get involved with like Little League Baseball, you have to actually go to Little League Baseball games. There's no Discord for Little League Baseball, but now there is. So as far as esports goes, so getting involved in all of these different communities and just being immersed in the culture, understanding where the pain patterns are, and just being curious is really the biggest thing that I can say will help you in your journey here. And yeah.
No, that's absolutely awesome, Elliot. It really has been amazing learning from you. This is definitely an area that I not in my wheelhouse. I've not really had the honor of speaking to many healthcare providers who work in this realm. So highly educational, and I know the listeners are going to take a lot of great information away from this. And it really piques interest to want to learn more about this and just understand that the way that we as healthcare providers can serve a new subculture, subgroup of people that haven't been taken care of the way they should have been, either taken care of by a healthcare provider or having the resources provided to them to take better care of themselves. So Elliot, thank you so much. Your contact information is below in the show notes, as well as your website to check out the Esports Health and Performance Institute. Thank you so much for taking some time to be on the cATalyzing podcast and to talk about your passion in esports and continue doing some really amazing things at 1HP. Keep it up, man.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Great to talk to you.